I used to work the night shift at a small gas station tucked into a forgotten stretch of highway just outside Hollow Creek, Tennessee. If you blinked, you'd miss it. One lone building, battered pumps, and a flickering sign that hadn't lit up right since the early 2000s. Back then, it felt like a nothing job, the kind people took when they needed to pay off bills or disappear for a while. For me, it was both. I'd moved out there 2 years ago after dropping out of community college, dragging a suitcase and a trail of bad decisions. My cousin Daryl ran the place, and he didn't ask questions, just handed me the keys and said, "Keep the drawer balanced, don't fall asleep on the job, and if someone pulls a knife, just give them the cash." Typical Tennessee hospitality. The store itself had a strange layout, main floor with snacks, smokes, and a couple of fridges humming against the back wall. There was one camera over the counter and one more pointing at the basement stairs, which was where we kept excess stock. No employee bathroom, just an outhouse around back. The basement always creeped me out. It wasn't finished, just poured concrete and exposed beams, and it smelled like mold and motor oil. It had those old metal shelves that rattle when you walk past them, even if you're careful. I never liked going down there, especially not at night. But that night, I didn't have a choice. It was early February, cold enough that even the rats probably thought twice before crawling out of wherever they lived. Business had been dead all evening, just a couple regulars. One guy buying scratch-offs, another topping off a rusted-out pickup and talking about how the government was controlling birds. Same old. I'd clocked in at 8 p.m., and by 11 p.m., I was watching the minutes crawl toward midnight. I was behind the counter scrolling through my phone when I noticed we were almost out of Ridgefield BBQ chips. That sounds dumb, but it mattered. Those chips were weirdly popular with our late-night crowd. I sighed and grabbed the key to the basement padlock. "Daryl, if you're listening," I muttered to no one. "One day you're gonna spring for a normal storage room." I grabbed the flashlight off the hook. It was one of those heavy mag lights, more of a weapon than a light, and headed down. Halfway down the stairs, I heard it. A metallic clatter, like something hitting the floor and rolling. It came from the far side of the basement. My heart rate jumped, but I told myself it was just a rat knocking over a can or something. I kept going. Then I heard footsteps, not scurrying, not shuffling, deliberate, human, coming closer. I froze. I didn't even breathe. The sound stopped just beyond the shelves. The air felt colder down there than usual, like it had dropped 10 degrees in a second. I backed up slowly, one step at a time, until I was near the stairs. I turned to run, and I swear to God, something moved in the corner of my eye. I sprinted up the stairs 2 at a time, slammed the door shut, and locked it. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped the flashlight. When I made it back behind the counter, I sat there for a second, chest heaving. Then I remembered the security monitor. I flicked it to the basement cam. There he was, standing right at the bottom of the stairs, looking directly up at the camera. He hadn't followed me up, just stood there, still, perfectly still. He looked like he could have been anybody. Clean clothes, maybe late 30s, short brown hair, not dirty or wild-eyed like some of the meth heads that sometimes drifted in from the woods. But his eyes, they were wide, and there was something hollow in them, and he was smiling. I called Daryl, didn't even bother with pleasantries. "There's a guy in the basement." Pause. Then, "What guy?" "Some dude. He's just standing there smiling at the damn camera. He didn't come through the store, he's in the basement, Daryl." It took him a second to respond. His voice had that edge to it, confused but trying to stay calm. "Okay. Lock the front door. Stay inside. Don't go back down. I'm coming. You want me to call the cops?" "Not yet. Just wait." I didn't like that, not one bit. But I did what he said. Locked the front, stayed by the register, eyes glued to the monitor. The guy didn't move for about 3 minutes, then, like he remembered something, he turned and walked out of frame. Gone. Daryl showed up about 12 minutes later in his beat-up Bronco. He stepped out holding his grandfather's old shotgun. I let him in, and he didn't waste time talking, just headed straight for the basement. "You're not going down there alone," I said. He looked at me, hesitated, then nodded. "All right, stay close." We crept down the stairs, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the dark. Nothing moved. The shelves were still. No sound except the slow creak of our footsteps. And no one was there. "Maybe it was just a camera glitch," Daryl offered as we climbed back up. "Don't insult me," I snapped. "You saw my face on the phone. I was scared out of my damn mind." He didn't say anything. I didn't sleep after my shift, kept the lights on in my trailer and replayed it all in my head. The guy had been real. I knew it. The camera didn't glitch. The look in his eyes wasn't a trick of the light. The next night I came in a little early, partly to prove I wasn't crazy. I reviewed the previous night's footage. From around 11:09 p.m. to 11:14 p.m., the basement camera feed went fuzzy, distorted, just static. Then it came back, and the man was gone. That wasn't a glitch. That was tampering. A week passed. No more sightings. I was starting to doubt myself until another employee, Lexi, who covered weekends, came in pale as a ghost for her Monday morning shift. "You left the basement door unlocked," she said. "No, I didn't. It was open, light was on." 2 days later, I came in for my shift and found a note taped to the inside of the counter. "You came close." That's all it said. Daryl reviewed the security footage. There was a 3-minute gap between 3:02 and 3:05 a.m., where the front camera cut out. Someone had turned the lens toward the ceiling. When it came back, the note was there. I started carrying a pocket knife. A month later, Daryl finally called the cops after Lexi found scratches on the basement door from the inside. Deep ones, like fingernails dragged down the wood. Sheriff Renner came out. Nice enough guy, but he didn't take it seriously. Said it was probably local kids messing around. Daryl didn't push. I did. "Why didn't you want me to call the cops the first time?" He wouldn't look at me. I just thought, maybe it was someone I knew, someone from back before the store shut down. That didn't sit right with me, and it sat even worse when I talked to a retired employee who used to work there in the early 2000s. She told me about a man who went missing in the area, last seen buying chips and smokes from that gas station. Security footage had shown him going down into the basement with the owner at the time. He never came back up. That owner, Daryl's uncle, he died 10 years ago. Heart attack. After that, I quit. Packed my stuff and left Hollow Creek. Haven't looked back. But sometimes, I dream about that smile. The eyes. Sometimes I wonder if there's still someone down in that basement. Not living. Not entirely dead. Just waiting, watching, and smiling. I never used to be one of those people who thought about worst-case scenarios. You know, the kind of overthinkers who kept pepper spray on their keychains or studied self-defense videos late at night. I used to think that if you weren't actively looking for trouble, you probably wouldn't find it. I don't think that anymore. It was March of last year, and I had just spent spring break visiting my aunt and uncle in a quiet little town called Maple Hollow, Pennsylvania. It's one of those places that still has a main street with an ice cream parlor, a post office run by a woman named Ruth, and an old movie theater with a marquee that hadn't changed in 6 years. My cousin Maddie was getting married in June, and spring break was my only real chance to spend time with her before the wedding chaos started. We'd had a great week, movies, antique shops, hiking the ridge trails behind the house. But after 7 days, I had to head back to Birmingham, Alabama, where I was in the middle of my sophomore year at UAB. I'm not great with goodbyes, so I left early on a Saturday morning without much fanfare, just a hug from my aunt, a sleepy wave from Maddie, and a few slices of banana bread wrapped in foil. I figured I'd get some coffee in Harrisburg, stop at my friend Ryan's place near Winston-Salem for a nap, and make it home in one long, exhausting drive. And because I was 20 years old and thought I was invincible, I brought my dog Milo with me, loaded up a few Red Bulls, and told myself I'd power through the whole trip. Milo was a 95-pound golden retriever poodle mix. Big, shaggy, and so gentle it was kind of embarrassing. The kind of dog who'd whimper if a squirrel looked at him wrong. But I loved him. He always made road trips feel less lonely. By the time I hit Southern Virginia, it was well after 1 a.m. I'd been driving for close to 11 hours, only stopping once to let Milo out and top off my tank somewhere outside Roanoke. I was on a wide, dark stretch of Route 29. No lights, no exits, just trees and more trees and that kind of rural silence that makes your ears buzz. My gas light flicked on. I swore under my breath. "All right, bud," I said to Milo, who was sprawled across the back seat like royalty. "Looks like we're taking the next exit." About 5 minutes later, I saw the familiar green glow of a highway sign. Idle Creek, 1 mile. I'd never heard of it, but I didn't have much of a choice. The exit ramp led onto a narrow road with no name, and a minute later, I spotted a small gas station on the left. It was the kind of place that looked like it had opened in the 70s and never upgraded. One lone canopy over 2 pumps, a dark convenience store behind it, and a flickering LED sign that said gas, diesel, ice. There were no other cars, no music, no hum of traffic. Just my headlights cutting across the empty lot and a buzzing overhead light above pump 2. Still, the pumps were lit, so I pulled in and stopped the engine. Milo sat up immediately. His ears perked. "Just gas, buddy. Chill." I got out, swiped my card at the pump, and started filling the tank. That's when I noticed the building behind the station. It wasn't attached to the convenience store. It was maybe 50 feet back, closer to the woods. A small, windowless shack with a rusted metal roof and a single bulb over the door. It was on. I don't know why that detail stuck with me, but it did. It felt wrong somehow, like someone had been waiting. Milo started growling, a low, rattly noise I'd never heard from him before. "Hey, it's okay." I crouched next to the open car door and put a hand on his head, but he didn't take his eyes off the shack. "Just tired. We're all tired." The pump clicked off. I stood to return the nozzle, and that's when I heard the engines. Multiple ones. 2 dark SUVs and a boxy white van turned into the lot from the road behind me. No headlights, no music, just the soft rumble of 6-cylinder engines. I froze. I wasn't even sure why at first. Maybe it was the way they came in so slowly, like they were familiar with the layout, like they'd done this before. They parked in a semicircle near the shack. Doors opened. Men got out. A lot of them. I counted at least 10. They didn't say anything. Just stretched, looked around, laughed quietly among themselves. A few of them wore heavy coats despite the mild weather. One guy had a walkie clipped to his belt and something bulky under his jacket that looked suspiciously like a sidearm. I was standing next to my car with the gas nozzle in hand, trying not to move. Then Milo growled again, louder this time. Several of the men turned to look at me. One of them smiled, not in a friendly way, in that deliberate, slow kind of smile that feels like a threat. My heart thudded. I shoved the nozzle back into the pump, jumped into the driver's seat, and locked the doors in one motion. They didn't follow, not right away, but they kept looking. I started the car, trying to breathe through the fear boiling in my chest. "It's okay, Milo, we're leaving." Then I saw them start to move. Not toward me, toward the shack. One by one, slipping behind it and disappearing from sight. No words, no flashlights. Just shadows folding into more shadows. All except one. The smiling man stayed near the SUV, watching me. My phone was on 3%. No signal. Of course. I reversed too fast, tires crunching over gravel, and peeled out of the lot with Milo whining in the back seat. I didn't stop again until I reached a diner with a lit parking lot 40 miles down the highway. My hands were shaking so bad I couldn't hold my coffee. The waitress, an older woman with kind eyes, asked if I was okay. I told her I was just tired. She didn't press. I slept in the booth with Milo's head on my lap. 3 weeks later, I was scrolling through local news while waiting for class to start. An article caught my eye. Human remains found in abandoned building outside Idle Creek. The photo was grainy, but I recognized it. The shack. They found 5 bodies in shallow pits beneath the floor. All male, none identified. The gas station had been closed for years. I stared at the screen for a long time, trying to ignore the nausea curling in my stomach. I don't know what I stumbled into that night. A meeting? A drop site? Something worse? I never told my parents, never reported it. What could I say? But I bought a satellite phone. I learned how to use pepper spray, and I never, ever stop for gas in the middle of nowhere. Even now, every time I see a cluster of dark SUVs or a smile that lingers too long, my stomach knots up. I think about the shack, the quiet, the flickering lights, and I think about what would have happened if Milo hadn't growled when he did. If I had taken just a few seconds longer. If I hadn't listened to my fear. It started with instinct, that deep, crawling feeling that something wasn't right, even when logic said everything should be fine. It was nearly midnight when Emma and her boyfriend, Ryan, left Blue Peak Amusement Park, a lesser-known theme park nestled in the heart of northern Georgia. They'd spent the whole day laughing, sunburned, riding roller coasters and eating overpriced churros. Ryan had surprised her with 2-day passes for her birthday, and although they were both exhausted, it had been one of the best weekends in months. They didn't live far, just 2 hours northeast, but they'd never driven this route before. The GPS had rerouted them off the main highway due to a multi-vehicle crash on I-77. They weren't too worried at first. Emma liked taking back roads sometimes, and Ryan had grown up driving on winding, dark roads in the mountains. It felt like a small adventure. But then the roads started to change. The paved highway gave way to uneven 2-lane roads and then narrower still, until they were driving down what looked like a barely used country route with no name on the GPS. There weren't any other cars, just endless pine trees, shoulderless curves, and the dim glow of their high beams. Emma checked the time, 12:47 a.m. They were deep in rural Georgia now. No streetlights, no traffic, no signs of life. She wasn't sure when they'd last seen a house. Ryan's car, a black 2010 Nissan 370Z, was sleek, but old enough to have quirks. The most annoying, a busted fuel gauge. He had to rely on the trip meter to estimate when they were running low. Right now it read 132.6 miles. Shit, he muttered, taking his hand off the wheel to tap the display. What? Emma looked over, concerned. I usually get nervous after 120 miles. We should have filled up before we left town. She frowned. There wasn't a gas station near the park. I know, I just forgot, I guess. He leaned forward, eyes scanning the dark horizon. We should find one soon. Emma's signal was weak, but she managed to pull up a map. There's one called Creekside Fill-Up, 5 minutes away. Perfect, he said, and she watched some of the tension leave his shoulders. But that's where everything began to feel off. As they approached the turnoff for the gas station, something tugged at Emma's nerves. The road veered sharply left, down a steep hill, where the trees pressed in on both sides like a tunnel. The headlights barely penetrated the dark. At the bottom, dim lights glowed, barely functional fluorescents that flickered like dying bugs. The station looked half dead. One old white building, 2 pumps, and not a soul in sight. Ryan slowed the car to a crawl and rolled into the lot. We'll be quick. Emma felt her throat tighten. I don't like this place. He turned to her, brows raised. It's just old. No, it's not that. I don't know. Something feels wrong. Ryan squeezed her hand. Just 2 minutes, I won't even go inside. As soon as he stepped out, that sense of unease intensified. Emma stared at the flickering light overhead. One side of the station's sign had burned out, so it just read, Creekside. There were no cars, no clerk visible inside, no sound except the hum of the car engine and the occasional chirp of cicadas. She locked the doors. Ryan pulled the pump handle. It clunked, like metal grinding metal. Emma stared down the road. It was a dead end, she realized now. The GPS had said the road ended just past the station. There was nowhere to go but back the way they came. And then she saw it. A white SUV crept up behind them from the same road they'd come down. Emma blinked, heart picking up. The SUV slowed, stopped. It didn't pull into the gas station. It just sat there, idling, about 50 feet away, engine running. She tapped on the window. Ryan, he glanced back. What? That car. He turned. Yeah? Why is it just sitting there? Ryan stared for a second. Weird. Emma watched the SUV. The driver's window was down. She could see the silhouette of a man, the glow of a lit cigarette. But he wasn't moving. He was just watching. Emma rolled her window down a crack. The air smelled like oil and hot pavement. The station lights buzzed and popped overhead. Ryan looked uneasy now. Maybe he's just waiting for us to move. The man in the SUV reversed, slowly, deliberately, then stopped again. He rolled forward, closer. That's when Ryan dropped the nozzle. Get ready to go. What? Now, Emma. He yanked the door open and jumped in, twisting the key. The car roared to life. As they turned to pull out of the lot, the SUV suddenly shot forward, cutting across the entrance to block them. Emma screamed. Ryan slammed the brakes and reversed hard, tires screeching. Hold on! He spun the car around, heading back down the narrow road they'd just come in on, swerving to avoid potholes and brush. The SUV followed. Fast. High beams on now, flooding their car with blinding white light. Emma looked back. The man was tailing them close, almost ramming. Why is he doing this? Ryan didn't answer. He was focused, hands tight on the wheel. Come on, there has to be a turn. There! Emma pointed. A tiny gravel road to the left, barely visible. Ryan yanked the wheel, skidding onto it, gravel spitting out behind them. The SUV missed the turn, barreled past, then stopped. Emma gasped. Is he turning around? Ryan drove faster. The road was rough, lined with trees and brush. Suddenly, headlights appeared in front of them. Another vehicle, not the SUV. This one was a dark pickup truck, parked across the road like a barricade. Ryan slammed the brakes again. Number no. The truck didn't move. Emma's heart was pounding so loud she could barely hear herself speak. Ryan, we're trapped. He threw the car in reverse again, trying to backtrack, but the white SUV had returned. It blocked the gravel road behind them. They were boxed in. Ryan reached for his phone. No service. Emma's voice broke. What do we do? The door to the truck opened. A man stepped out. He was tall, wearing a dark flannel shirt, holding something in his hand. A crowbar. He walked slowly, deliberately, toward them. The SUV's driver exited too. Same thing. Crowbar. Same heavy walk. Ryan floored the gas, straight into the woods. The car tore off the gravel path, bumping and crashing through small trees and shrubs. Emma screamed, shielding her face as branches slapped the windshield. Somehow they found another dirt path. Ryan followed it blindly, not caring where it went. After 5 minutes of chaos, the woods broke open into a small clearing, an old maintenance shed with flickering lights and an ancient-looking vending machine out front. They stopped. The area was still, silent. Emma couldn't breathe. Are they still following? Ryan shook his head, looking back. I think we lost them. They sat in silence, hands shaking, hearts thudding. When they finally found a signal, they called the sheriff's department. It took 45 minutes for deputies to arrive. They told the officer what happened. He nodded grimly, expression hardening. You were on Idle Creek Road. Emma blinked. Yeah. That was the name on the map. The officer exhaled slowly. You're lucky. That stretch has got a reputation. Drug trafficking, robberies, a few disappearances. Locals know to stay away. Emma sat there numb. They were just trying to get gas. Ryan never fixed the fuel gauge after that. He sold the car 2 weeks later, and Emma never drove at night on back roads again. Some instincts aren't paranoia. They're warnings. And some gas stations aren't abandoned. They're bait. It started with the cold. The kind that settles into your bones, even through layers of fabric. The kind that sneaks under your collar and makes your fingers stiff no matter how tightly you tuck them into gloves. It was early December, around 4:15 a.m., the sky still black as tar. The roads were dry but crusted with frost that glittered beneath the streetlights. Mia Harper adjusted the heat in her car again, already halfway through her thermos of gas station coffee. She was heading to the bakery where she worked mornings, had picked up an earlier shift to prep for the holiday orders. The car's fuel light flickered to life with a soft ping. Of course, she muttered, eyeing the gauge. Nearly empty. She exhaled through her nose and rubbed her temple. The nearest station was a few minutes out of the way, but she wasn't about to risk running dry in the dark. She turned onto Highway 14, a mostly empty stretch between the outskirts of Fairview and a cluster of factories near Ridgebend. The station she chose was one she'd only been to once before, months back, in daylight. The sign read, Bennett's Gas and Food. It was small but well lit, perched alone on a curved bend in the highway. A faded Coca-Cola banner flapped weakly against the side of the building. A few older model cars were parked by the pumps, spaced far enough apart that it didn't seem crowded. The kind of place open 24/7, but with just one employee inside who probably hated their job. Mia pulled up to pump 3 and shifted into park. She glanced in her mirrors as a reflex, an old habit from living alone for so many years. There was a beat-up tan van parked diagonally across from her, the kind with paint chips and an old lawnmower logo barely visible on the side. A man stood beside it, hood up, smoking a cigarette. Something about him felt still, not relaxed, not shivering in the cold, just standing there, like he was waiting for something. Mia hesitated. Then she exhaled and got out of the car. She wasn't about to let paranoia win over a low gas tank. Hip-hop music was thumping out of tinny overhead speakers mounted beneath the station's awning. The volume was loud, too loud for this time of morning, like whoever was inside had cranked it up to stay awake or just didn't care. She inserted her card into the pump and selected regular. As she unscrewed the gas cap, she heard it. A voice. Hey, you got a second? Mia turned instinctively. The man from the van had crossed about 20 feet and was standing just outside the yellow line that outlined the pump stations. He looked mid-30s, rough stubble, a heavy canvas jacket stained with something dark on the hem. His voice wasn't aggressive. If anything, it sounded friendly, casual. Mia gave a neutral nod, hand still on the pump handle. What's up? You got jumper cables? He asked, rubbing his hands together. My van's dead. Think the battery's shot. Been trying to find someone since like 3. She shook her head. Sorry, I don't. Just switched cars a few weeks ago. Haven't stocked the trunk yet. Damn, he muttered, glancing back at the van. No worries. Thought I'd ask. Sucks being stuck in this cold. She nodded, her attention already drifting back to the pump. Then he added, You think you could call my girlfriend for me? My phone ran out of minutes last night. Just need her to swing by and give me a jump. Shouldn't take more than a second. Mia hesitated. She glanced toward the station's glass doors. No sign of life inside. No clerk peering out. Okay. What's the number? He recited a number quickly, and Mia keyed it in. The call rang 4 or 5 times, then clicked into a robotic voicemail. The mailbox is full and cannot accept new messages. No greeting, no name. He gave her a second number. Same thing. Guess she still hasn't fixed that voicemail. He chuckled, but it sounded forced. Mia smiled thinly and looked down at her phone. Her gut stirred uneasily. Then came the question. You think you could give me a quick ride up the road? She looked at him sharply. Where? He pointed over her car toward the far end of the bend. There's an old gas station like a mile from here, closed down place. That's where my car actually is. I borrowed a bike to get down here hoping someone would be around. Mia stared at him. I thought your van was your car. He paused. Nah, just resting here 'cause the bike chain snapped. Van's not mine, belongs to a buddy. The story was starting to fray at the edges. You borrowed a bike from someone at 4 a.m.? In this weather? Yeah, he said quickly. Guy owed me a favor, just trying to get to work. Mia didn't respond. Her hand hovered near the pump handle. Her heart was starting to pick up pace. He shifted his weight. Look, I know it sounds sketchy, but I'm not trying anything. Just need a lift like a mile. You'd be dropping me at my car and that's it. Her mind was racing now. Every worst-case scenario surged up. News reports, stories she'd read online, warnings about helping strangers. And yet, he didn't look threatening. He looked tired, cold. But that didn't mean he wasn't dangerous. She made a split-second decision. Hold on. I think I have jumper cables in the back after all. Let me check. He nodded eagerly. Yeah, thanks. You're a lifesaver. Mia turned toward her car, walking briskly. She didn't open the trunk. She got in, locked the door, and started the engine. Then she drove. She didn't look in the rearview, didn't wait to see if he shouted. Her heart was hammering, pulse a dull roar in her ears. Back on the highway, her hands trembled on the steering wheel. There was no car waiting at the other gas station. She was sure of it. That place had been shut down for months. And no one rides a bike down a frost-covered highway at 4 a.m. to find jumper cables. It took 20 minutes for her nerves to settle. She didn't stop again until she was in the parking lot of the bakery, parked beneath bright lights, doors locked, phone in hand. Mia sat for a while, staring through the windshield. She imagined the man standing in the glow of the pumps watching her tail lights disappear, realizing she wasn't coming back. A part of her still felt guilty, but another part, stronger, clearer, knew she'd dodged something that morning. Maybe not a killer, maybe not a carjacker, but something wasn't right. And sometimes, survival is just about listening to that small voice in the back of your mind, the one that says, leave. She turned off the engine, shifted into park, and walked inside to start her shift. I didn't mind working late. At 18, fresh out of high school and newly employed, I actually preferred night shifts over early mornings. There was something peaceful about finishing work when the world was quiet and the roads were mostly empty. My first job wasn't glamorous. It was a closing shift at a local home goods store in a small town outside of Lexington, Kentucky. But it gave me freedom, a paycheck, and my first taste of independence. The only downside was the commute. It was a 30-minute drive each way, mostly along dark back roads and stretches of highway where your headlights were the only sign of life. No street lamps, no houses, just silence and asphalt. My mom wasn't thrilled about the arrangement, but she trusted me. Still, on my very first day, she gave me one piece of advice I could practically hear in her voice every night when I turned the key in the ignition. Don't let your tank get low. If you need gas, fill up before work, never after, never at night. She meant well. I was petite and looked even younger than I was. If someone were watching, I'd be an easy target. But I thought she was being dramatic. We lived in a safe town. Things like that didn't happen here. I didn't ignore her advice right away. The first couple weeks, I kept a close eye on the gauge. But life gets busy, and routines settle in. I got comfortable, careless. And that's how I ended up at a gas station off Route 60 at 12:16 a.m. on a Thursday. It had been a long shift. One of my coworkers called out sick, so I'd stayed late to help with restocking. By the time I clocked out, my feet ached and I was starving. I just wanted to get home, throw my shoes off, and collapse. I didn't even notice the gas light until I was already on the highway. I muttered under my breath and pulled off the next exit, heading toward a station I'd never used before, Scott's Fuel Depot. It wasn't a chain I recognized, but it was lit, and it was open. That was enough for me. The parking lot was mostly empty, except for one other car parked by the air pump, engine off. I figured someone had stopped to take a call or rest. I pulled up to pump number 2, swiped my card, and started fueling. $10. Just enough to get home. As I stood there, arms folded against the chill, I had this weird moment, just a flicker, where I felt like I was being watched. But when I glanced around, no one was there. Just the guy behind the counter, tall and lanky with dark hair and a messy beard, watching a small TV behind the register. He didn't even look up. I shook it off. Paranoia, late-night nerves, nothing more. The pump clicked off. I grabbed the receipt, screwed the cap back on, and was just reaching for my door handle when a voice crackled from the speaker above the pump. "Ma'am, there was an issue with your payment. Can you come inside?" The voice was distorted, metallic. I looked up at the speaker, then toward the store. The clerk was suddenly looking right at me, standing still behind the glass with one hand raised slightly, beckoning. Something about it was off. I raised my receipt in the air, confused. I hadn't even gotten into the car yet. How could there be an issue? I pressed the help button. "I have my receipt," I said firmly. Payment went through. "It printed wrong. I need to run the card again inside." His voice was too quick, flat. No apology, no explanation, just a demand. I stared at him through the window. His eyes were wide, fixed on me. But there was something else in them now. Urgency, tension, not the kind you get when a customer refuses to pay. I stepped back toward the pump and pulled out my phone, opening my banking app. The charge was there, $10, exactly as expected. "I'm good," I said. "I'm not coming in." His mouth moved, but the intercom was silent, so I raised my voice. "If this is some scam, forget it. I'm not going inside for $10 of gas." I was frustrated, ready to just drive off. I gave him a look and turned toward the driver's side door. That's when I saw his face change. He started banging his hand against the glass, mouthing something fast, urgent. He picked up a piece of paper and a thick black Sharpie, writing something in messy, slanted letters. He slammed it against the window. "Back seat. Don't open door." I froze. At first, I didn't even process it. My brain just stopped, like the message wasn't computing. Then I slowly turned my head toward my car. My back door was just slightly ajar. I hadn't left it that way. I didn't think. I ran, sprinted across the lot, threw myself through the gas station door. The clerk hit the lock immediately and yanked me behind the counter. He had a small handgun in his other hand, pointed low but ready. "Stay down," he whispered, eyes fixed on the monitors above the register. The security cameras showed my car, the pumps, the dark corners of the lot. For a few seconds, nothing moved. And then, from the back seat, a figure slowly slid out. A man, tall, hooded, wearing a gray windbreaker and loose sweatpants. He moved like he knew how to stay hidden, low to the ground, quick. He didn't look toward the building, didn't panic, just slipped into the shadows and disappeared around the side of the building. The clerk was already on the phone with 911. I sat on the floor, shaking. It hit me in waves, that I'd been seconds away from driving off, from locking myself into a vehicle with a stranger hidden behind me, that I hadn't heard anything, that I hadn't felt anything. The clerk's name was Marcus. He was 24 and had worked night shifts for 2 years. He told me he saw the guy hanging by the dumpster on the cameras before I even pulled in. When I parked, the man had made a beeline for my car. He ducked low, opened the back passenger door, and got inside, leaving it cracked just enough to avoid the click of it shutting. He didn't touch the front doors, didn't grab me. He waited. Marcus said he'd seen people hide in back seats before, but usually it was people sleeping off drugs or trying to steal change. This guy had a look, cold, calculating. The police arrived 10 minutes later. They searched the lot, the nearby woods, even brought dogs out. But it was no good. The guy was gone. There were no fingerprints, nothing stolen, nothing left behind. I didn't sleep that night, or the next. I kept imagining what might have happened if I hadn't stopped, if Marcus hadn't been paying attention. It took me weeks to feel safe driving again. Even now, years later, I still check the back seat before getting in, even in broad daylight. I never get gas at night, and I never let the tank get low. The scariest part? The man didn't want my wallet. He didn't touch my purse. He didn't grab me at the pump. He was waiting for me to trap myself, and I almost did. So here's what I'll tell you. It's not enough to look careful. You have to be careful. Trust that gut feeling. Take the long way home if it means avoiding somewhere sketchy. Listen when someone who loves you tells you how to stay safe, because one night you might not get a second chance. I was never the type to get spooked easily. Not after spending 3 years as a Marine, trained to keep my cool in situations where most people would panic. You learn a lot about fear when you live it day in and day out, whether it's in training or deployed overseas. The whole point was to master it, not let it master you. My name's Jason Miller, and at the time this happened, I was living in Tucson, Arizona. The city's heat was starting to fade into spring, but the nights still carried that dry, sharp chill that makes you pull your jacket tighter. I was juggling 2 jobs to keep the bills paid. The first was a security position at a warehouse on the outskirts of town. Graveyard shift, all quiet and empty aisles except for the occasional rattling forklift or distant radio chatter from the day crew. The second was nights at a 24-hour diner downtown. Both of them exhausting, but I had to keep going. That night started like most others. I clocked out of the diner around 1:30 a.m. and was giving my coworker Lisa a ride home. We both were bone-tired, the kind of tired that sticks to your bones and blurs the edges of your thoughts. On the way, we grabbed some greasy food from a taco stand. We didn't talk much, just the usual small talk. How the shift went, what we had planned for the weekend, the mundane stuff you say when your brain is fried. I dropped Lisa off around 1:50 a.m. at her apartment, said goodbye, and turned toward my own place. I was just about to pull into my driveway when I remembered I was dangerously low on gas. I didn't want to risk it, so I decided to stop at the closest gas station, a small, dingy one just a block away from my apartment. Pulling in, I noticed how eerily empty the lot was. No cars, no people. Just the buzzing neon sign and the harsh glare of the overhead lights cutting through the darkness. The kind of silence that feels too quiet. The kind that stretches long shadows across cracked concrete and weeds pushing up through the cracks. I eased my car forward to the pumps, the engine's hum dying down as I shut it off. The place gave off a weird vibe, but I told myself it was just tiredness playing tricks on me. I grabbed my wallet and headed toward the entrance. As I walked, something moved out of the corner of my eye. A figure, tall and lean, slipping quietly along the side of the building, just in the shadows. I froze for a second, blinking against the harsh light. Maybe it was a homeless guy looking for shelter or a junkie scavenging for something. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. Usually you ignore those shadows. But the way he moved was deliberate, careful, like he didn't want to be seen. I stepped inside the store. The fluorescent lights flickered faintly. The cashier was a kid no older than 18, bored and tired, barely looking up as I grabbed a Monster energy drink from the cooler. $3.50, he mumbled, shoving the coins I handed him into the register. When I pushed the door open to leave, I glanced back. The figure was gone. I told myself it was nothing. Probably wandered off. I walked back to my car, the crunch of gravel under my boots loud in the silence. Then I saw him again, closer. Standing just near the rear of my car, hidden mostly by the shadows but enough in the light for me to see his eyes glinting. A cold, hard stare. My heartbeat quickened, a surge of adrenaline rushing through my veins. I stopped, hands loose at my sides, trying to appear calm. This was no random homeless guy. Something about him didn't add up. Before I could reach my door, I heard footsteps behind me, fast and light but purposeful. I spun around, fists clenched, ready to defend myself. He was there, less than an arm's length away. His breath smelled like stale cigarettes and something metallic. He didn't say a word, just stared. 1,000 thoughts raced through my head. Call out, punch him, run for the door, but I remembered what the Marines drilled into us. Don't let fear control you. Stay calm. Think. "Hey," I said, voice steady despite the cold sweat on my skin. "You lost or something?" His mouth curled into a cruel smile. "Got some change?" he whispered, voice rough and low. Relief flickered. If all he wanted was money, I could give that and get out of this. I reached into my pocket. Then everything went sideways. A sharp, brutal tug yanked me backward by my hair. The world jerked violently as his other hand pulled a knife from his jacket, a thin blade that gleamed under the streetlight. "Don't scream or yell or I'll kill you," he hissed close to my ear. The cold metal pressed against my throat, and my pulse pounded louder than the silence around us. I swallowed my panic, nodded slowly, keeping my face calm. "Good," he said. "Now we're going to New Mexico. Don't do anything stupid or I'll cover your car's interior with your blood." The knife stayed pressed to my neck, unyielding and ice cold. My mind raced. What the hell did he want? Why me? I reminded myself to breathe. Marines or not, fear still sank its claws deep. "How do you want to do this?" I asked, voice low but steady. "Directions or—" He eased his grip just enough so I could breathe easier, though the knife stayed in place. "Use your GPS. Shut up." Hands shaking, I pulled out my phone and launched the Maps app. "Where exactly in New Mexico?" I asked. He laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You just drive." I swallowed, took a deep breath, and started the car. Every mile felt heavier, my nerves fraying with every passing second. At a red light near the edge of town, I caught sight of a Ford Ranger barreling down a side road. My mind screamed. This could be my chance. When I slammed the gas, my car lunged forward, heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The Ford Ranger was speeding toward the intersection on the side road, and for a split second, I thought maybe help had arrived. The man's grip on my hair loosened, startled by my sudden move. I seized the moment, sliding my hand under his wrist, twisting sharply. The knife clattered onto the steering wheel, and he cursed, stumbling backward into the shadows. Without thinking twice, I slammed the door shut, locked it, and hit the horn in rapid blasts, hoping to attract attention. The Ford Ranger screeched to a stop beside me, and the driver, a middle-aged man with a rough face and concerned eyes, asked, "What's going on? You okay?" I barely managed to say, "Don't let him get away." The man glanced around, but the dark figure was gone. I kept my doors locked and called 911 immediately, voice shaking as I explained what happened. The dispatcher was calm but urgent, promising police were on their way. When the officers arrived, they took my statement, examined the area, but found no trace of the attacker. I gave them every detail: the knife, the voice, the threats. They told me to stay vigilant, offered to send a patrol car by my apartment during the night. The adrenaline that had kept me alive faded fast, replaced by a crushing exhaustion and a flood of shaken emotions. I couldn't sleep. Every creak in my apartment made me jump. I started locking every door and window, even the ones that usually stayed open. I bought a gun permit and invested in self-defense classes, but it wasn't the training or the weapons that mattered the most anymore. It was the constant tension in my chest, the way my mind replayed those moments again and again. I found myself watching the shadows outside my windows jumping at the slightest noise. Work became harder. At the diner, I was jumpy and distracted, sometimes breaking down in the bathroom stalls. The warehouse felt less like a job and more like a trap. I knew the getting over it advice was bullshit. You don't just move on when something like that happens. You adapt. I started talking to a therapist, someone who helped me put words to the fear, the anger, and the helplessness. Months passed. The man never showed up again. The police never found him. I never stopped carrying my gun or knives, but I also learned to carry something else, awareness, and a cautious peace. Fear hadn't broken me, but it had changed me. I still drive past that gas station, sometimes glancing toward the shadows, wondering if I'll see him again. But I don't freeze anymore. I breathe, I think, and I keep moving. I never thought a simple road trip would turn into the most terrifying night of my life. But that's exactly what happened. My name is Sami Al-Harbi. I'm 24 years old, and I've always loved exploring the vast landscapes of Saudi Arabia. From the bustling streets of Riyadh to the peaceful deserts near Al-Ula, I've always felt that traveling made me come alive. That winter day, I was restless and craving something different, a break from the usual routine of my city life. I decided to drive north, about 650 kilometers from my home in Dammam, to visit the small town of Al-Juf. It was about 2:45 p.m. when I started. The winter sun was still high, but I knew it wouldn't last long. Winters here get dark early. The drive was peaceful at first. The roads stretched endlessly, the desert slowly giving way to rocky hills and sparse greenery. I was driving alone, the car radio playing soft Arabic tunes that I found soothing. By 6:45 p.m., the sky was starting to dim, and the cold air seeped in through the windows. About 50 kilometers outside Al-Juf, hunger hit me hard. I hadn't eaten since morning, and the idea of stopping at a gas station crossed my mind. I checked the GPS for the nearest station and saw a small, unnamed one just a few kilometers ahead. It was a little off the main highway, and the reviews were non-existent, which should have been my first warning. When I pulled in around 7:05 p.m., the gas station was almost deserted. The flickering yellow sign was barely lit, and the entire place looked like it hadn't been updated since the early 90s. The building's paint was peeling, and the pavement was cracked and stained with old oil spills. I parked my car and took a deep breath before stepping inside the convenience store. The fluorescent lights inside buzzed annoyingly, casting harsh shadows over the dusty shelves. The smell was a strange mixture of old cigarettes, gasoline, and something else, something metallic. Behind the counter stood a man who looked tired and worn. He was in his late 40s, his beard patchy and gray, and his eyes tired but alert. His name tag read Hassan. When I asked him about the restroom, he nodded toward the back. "Just down that hallway. It's clean enough," he said, his voice rough but polite. I nodded and headed toward the bathroom, my stomach growling louder. As I walked past the dimly lit hallway, something made me pause. From the bathroom area, I heard a sudden, sharp scream, a desperate, chilling sound that froze my blood. I stopped dead, my heart pounding. For a moment, I thought it might be my imagination. Then I heard it again, a wet, heavy thud followed by silence. Curious and alarmed, I peeked cautiously around the corner and saw something I can never forget. A body was being thrown out of one of the bathroom stalls. It was covered in blood, and the lifeless form lay twisted on the floor. Before I could react, a man stepped out. He looked rough, mid-30s, face marred with deep scars and dark bruises. His clothes were filthy, ripped, stained with dirt and what looked like dried blood. A long, rusty knife was partially visible in his coat pocket. He glanced sharply around, his eyes locking on mine for a terrifying moment. I ducked behind a nearby pillar, my breath shallow, heart hammering in my chest. He started dragging the body toward a small, decrepit shed behind the gas station. It was obvious he was trying to hide whatever he had done. Frozen in fear, I tried to make myself as small as possible. The cold night air bit at my skin, but I couldn't move. My mind screamed at me to run, but my legs refused. Suddenly, he turned toward the parking lot. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't see my car. For a moment, he walked toward it, his eyes scanning every shadow. I felt like my life depended on not making a sound. After what felt like hours, he finally turned away and disappeared behind the shed. I didn't hesitate. I sprinted to my car, fumbling with the keys. The engine roared to life, and I slammed my foot on the gas, tires squealing as I sped down the empty highway. It was only after I was miles away that I allowed myself to breathe properly. I spotted a mosque lit up in the distance and pulled over, running inside like a man possessed. The imam, a kind-faced man named Sheikh Abdullah, welcomed me without question. After hearing my frantic story, he handed me a bottle of water and urged me to call the police. Within minutes, uniformed officers arrived and took my statement seriously. They went back to the gas station to investigate. Sitting in that mosque, surrounded by the calm chants of prayer, I realized how close I had come to death. An hour later, the police returned. The man I saw was arrested, a criminal who had been hiding there for years, responsible for numerous disappearances linked to that isolated gas station. The most chilling detail? His own family, his wife and parents, had been found murdered in that very bathroom years ago. He had been living in the shadows, using the gas station bathroom as his twisted hunting ground, dragging victims to the shed behind to hide their bodies. I was lucky. Had I ignored my instincts and walked into that bathroom like any normal traveler, I might be another name on the list. Now, I'm here to say, always trust your gut. Stay alert. Because sometimes, the scariest monsters don't lurk in the dark forests or abandoned houses. They hide in places you least expect. I never liked night drives, not because of the dark or the quiet or even the loneliness, though all of that had a weight to it. It was more the feeling that no one was watching out for you once the sun went down, that you could disappear into the black behind your headlights and nobody would know until the next morning, if they ever knew at all. 3 years ago, I was 18, still figuring out who I was and what counted as normal fear versus something I should actually listen to. My boyfriend at the time, Ryan, worked the night shift at a gas station on the edge of a declining industrial city in South Dakota, the kind of place where people either worked nights or never worked again. We lived in an apartment above a shut-down pawn shop 2 blocks off the main drag, next to a broken-down strip mall that hadn't seen a tenant since the 2000s. The gas station, a 24-hour Quick Mart, sat across from a U-Haul lot and a concrete mixing plant. After sundown, the whole area looked like a forgotten corner of a map, streetlights buzzing over cracked pavement, neon signs blinking like dying bugs. It was a weird town. Not big enough to have a proper downtown, but big enough for crime to get buried under someone else's problem. The kind of town where you double-check your car doors even in broad daylight, and the police only show up if there's blood on the sidewalk. Ryan didn't have a car back then. I drove him to and from work because the idea of him walking that stretch alone, especially past the freight yards, was enough to keep me up at night. I didn't mind the drives. Gave me an excuse to stay out late without having to explain it to anyone. Sometimes, if the shift was slow, I'd come early and hang out with him for a bit. Just sit in the back by the stockroom, sip a cold soda, trade dumb inside jokes. He'd show me weird customer receipts or tell me about the old man who bought scratchers in bulk and muttered to himself the whole time. That night, early October, the air had that tight chill that makes your skin prickle. I remember because I'd forgotten my hoodie and had to grab one of Ryan's extras from the back seat, some oversized crew neck from high school that still smelled faintly like engine oil and cinnamon gum. I parked my car on the side of the building like always. The Quick Mart had 3 security cameras all facing forward, so the side lot, meant mostly for deliveries, was a blind spot. That night it was just me and a white Chevy pickup a few spots down. Fairly new, clean, not lifted like most of the local trucks. Its engine wasn't running, and its headlights were off. I didn't think anything of it, until I stepped out. He was leaning against the side of the truck like he'd been waiting there a while. Late 30s, maybe early 40s. White guy, tall, but not unusually so. Wearing jeans and a long-sleeve flannel, no jacket despite the cold. His face was clean-shaven, and there was something sterile about him. Too neat for a guy just idling outside a gas station at midnight. I had to walk past him to get to the front doors. I figured he'd nod or ignore me. Instead, he stepped partially into my path. "Hey," he said in a voice that tried to sound casual. I slowed. Not stopped, just slowed. "Yeah?" "My truck won't start," he said. "You know anything about engines?" I forced a polite smile. "Not really, sorry." "You sure?" he asked. "Could really use a hand. Battery might be dead or something." I motioned toward the gas station. "My boyfriend's inside. He might know more." His expression changed, just slightly. A flicker, like a glitch in a video. "Boyfriend, huh?" "Yeah." I tried to move past him again. He shifted, not blocking me directly, but enough to make it awkward, like I'd have to brush his arm to get by. "It'll just take a second," he said, voice low now. "Just need someone to look under the hood while I try the ignition." "I really can't help you," I said, a little firmer this time. "I'm not good with cars, and I'm cold." He chuckled, though it didn't sound like he found anything funny. Didn't think it took much skill to stand still. That made something go tight in my chest. It wasn't just what he said, it was how he said it. Like he wasn't actually asking for help. Like he was watching how far he could push before I flinched. I didn't flinch, but I did walk, fast, past him and toward the entrance, not looking back. Inside, the store was nearly empty. Ryan was behind the counter counting the till. He looked up and smiled like always, but that faded when he saw my face. "Everything okay?" he asked, stepping out from behind the register. "There's a guy by a white pickup out back," I said under my breath. "Says his truck won't start. He's acting weird." Ryan didn't ask questions, just grabbed his jacket and came outside with me. But by the time we got there, the pickup was gone. Not slowly easing down the road. Gone. Tires screeched faintly in the distance, fading fast. We stood there in the cold, watching taillights disappear down the empty stretch of industrial road. Ryan rubbed his hands together, eyes narrowed. "You didn't go near it, right?" Number I said no, and kept walking. Good. The way he said it stuck with me. Not smart, not thanks for being careful, just good. Like he knew something I didn't. I never saw the guy again. We told Ryan's manager the next day. She laughed and said maybe he was just drunk or confused. "This town's full of weirdos," she added, rolling her eyes. But I know what I felt. That guy didn't need help. That truck started just fine. He was waiting in the blind spot, waiting for someone who wouldn't ask too many questions, someone who'd walk just a little too close. A week after that night, I started noticing things. It began small. A white pickup, same model, parked across from our apartment. Never stayed long. Maybe an hour, then gone. Different plates every time, or none that I could see from our window. Then came the hang-up calls. Always after midnight. Always silent. One night I went to the grocery store alone and saw that same truck idling near the exit of the lot. I froze, gripping my keys like a weapon. The second I ducked back into the store, it peeled out again. I started documenting everything. Dates, times, locations. I didn't want to be paranoid. I wanted to be prepared. Ryan was skeptical at first. Thought maybe I was just shaken from the gas station thing. But after he saw the truck parked a block from his work again, he changed his tune. "Maybe we should call someone," he said. "Who?" I snapped. "The cops? They'll say he's just running errands." But we called anyway. They said exactly that. "No laws being broken," the officer told us. "If you see him trespassing or threatening you directly, let us know. Until then, not much we can do." So we got cameras, tiny ones, hidden by the windows, one facing the street, another by the stairs. The first week, nothing. The second, motion detected at 2:13 a.m. A tall figure walking past the building, paused, looked up at our window, then gone. That night, I didn't sleep. Neither did Ryan. We sat up with the lights off, staring at the shadows, waiting. The night it came to a head, Ryan was off. I was alone. He'd gone to visit his sister 2 hours away, and I stayed behind because I had an early shift the next morning. I locked up tight, triple-checked the windows, kept the hallway light on. At 3:07 a.m., the motion sensor chimed again. I crept to the window, pulled the curtain back an inch. There he was, white truck, parked across the street, lights off. And then the driver's side door opened. He didn't walk toward the building this time. He just stood there, looking up, at me. He just stood there, looking up, at me. I stepped back from the window like it burned me. My chest was tight, hands shaking. I didn't know what to do. Call the police again? Turn off the lights? Run? Number. He hadn't done anything, not technically, but he was escalating. That much I knew. I crawled to the side table and grabbed my phone, heart hammering, fingers slippery with sweat. 911. I whispered, "There's a man outside my apartment. He's been following me for weeks." The dispatcher's voice was calm. Too calm. "Is he armed?" "I don't know. He's just standing there. But he's been here before." "Has he made any threats?" "No," I snapped. "But he's watching me. He's parked outside in a white truck. He's been following me. This isn't the first time." "Okay, officers are en route. Stay on the line." I didn't hear the rest. I was too focused on the window. I crawled back, just enough to peek. He was gone. The truck was still there. Door open, engine off. But he wasn't in it. Or around it. That was worse. Much worse. I ducked, moved away from the window completely. The apartment felt smaller by the second. Every wall too thin, every lock too breakable. I grabbed the baseball bat from under the couch, the one Ryan insisted we keep, just in case. I didn't hear footsteps, but I heard the back staircase creak, slow, deliberate. My throat dried up. Then the sound stopped. Silence. For a moment. And then, a knock. Not on the front door. On the window. My stomach dropped. I didn't scream. I couldn't. The curtain shifted just slightly. A shadow passed behind it. Too close. He was trying to see in. And I'd been standing right in the glow of the hallway light. I backed into the kitchen, turned off every light I could, tried to stay hidden while still watching every angle. The knocking stopped. Then came the jiggle of the front doorknob. I whispered to the dispatcher, "He's at the door. He's trying to get in. I need you to stay calm. Officers are close. 2 minutes out." I didn't know if I had 2 minutes. The knob jiggled again. A low, almost thoughtful rattling. Not rushed, like he was trying to gauge how solid it was. Like he had time. Like he knew no one else was coming. And then, a voice. "I know you're in there." I froze. "I'm not gonna hurt you," he said. "Just want to talk. You're making this into something it doesn't have to be." That voice. It wasn't angry. It wasn't pleading. It was casual, measured, controlled. And that terrified me most. The next 30 seconds felt like a lifetime. I stayed behind the fridge, clutching the bat with both hands, waiting to hear glass shatter. But it never did. Instead, a new sound. Sirens. They didn't stop down the street or cruise past like usual. They pulled up right in front. Flashing blue lights lit up the living room like a storm. Heavy boots stomped the stairs, shouted commands. I didn't dare move until I heard them say my name. They didn't catch him. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. Vanished into one of the alleys behind the pawn shop. Left the truck. Left the driver's side door open like bait. The truck was stolen, of course. Plates traced to a different county. Nothing inside. No prints they could lift. I gave my full report. Showed them the camera footage, the phone logs, my notes. They nodded. Promised to keep an eye on the area. Then they left. And I was alone again. Ryan moved back in the next morning. He didn't go back to his sister's. He didn't go to work. For 3 weeks he stayed with me every night, sleeping by the front door with that same baseball bat. But the man never came back. We moved a month later. Left that apartment, that town, everything. I still don't know who he was, what he wanted, why he chose me. All I know is, he wasn't drunk, he wasn't confused. He was looking for someone, and he thought for a while that someone was me. Sometimes when I drive late at night, when the roads are empty and the sky is pitch black, I still think about that pickup. Those eyes staring up at my window, not angry, not curious, just calculating, like he was already building the next plan, for the next girl, in the next town. And I wonder if she'll know how close the danger is before it's too late. Because I almost didn't.